Welcome to Plant Your Seed. I'm your host, Fred Ferris. On each episode, we share stories of how ordinary people have transformed their lives. Each story is compassionate, each story is authentic, and each story is a transformation. Here are the stories of the people who are changing our world by transitioning to a plant-based diet. Today on Plant Your Seed, joining us from Canada is Jessica Scott-Reid. Jessica is a writer and animal advocate. Her work is featured in newspapers across Canada. She also co-hosts the Paw and Order podcast, Canada's animal law podcast. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I've read a bunch of your articles. Farm animals culled en masse as COVID-19 outbreaks halt meat and dairy production. When gassing animals to death doesn't work. And even your latest unwritten rule of animal rescue, don't call the cops. Mm-hmm. Now, when you're writing and researching these articles, how does the research and writing affect you? What I mean is, it must take a toll on you mentally.
Yeah, I've been doing this for several years now, and those headlines you all mentioned was from Sentient Media. So they are an animal advocacy publication based out of California. The work I do for them is a little different than the other work I do for newspapers here in Canada, which has to be a little bit more subdued for a mainstream audience. So thankfully, Sentient Media allows me to do these sort of deeper dives into issues affecting animal advocacy, animal agriculture. I have to watch a lot of nasty stuff. I have to read a lot of horrible things. I talk to a lot of experts that tell me terrible things. But on the other hand, I also work so closely with advocates and activists that are doing awesome things too. So I do try to balance out my work in that way because it helps me mentally keep up the hope. If you do so much of the negative stuff, you start to lose hope. And thankfully, the community amongst animal advocates and vegans is so huge now and so great that talking with them as part of my work always keeps my head above water.
When you're talking to people about these horrible things that happen, how do you just kind of distance yourself in order to write the story?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a journalist, right? So that's important. And even though a lot of the work I do in newspapers in particular is opinion work, which allows you to be a little bit more passionate. You kind of have to be. I still have to maintain a level of seriousness. I can't use super emotional language. You know, they wouldn't let me. The motto I always use is be clever, not crazy. So keeping myself professional helps sort of my mental health in that way too. Keeping it distant somewhat as a job, even though it's part of my lifestyle. I'm vegan, obviously, and this affects me personally, but I think it helps me keep a distance, the fact that it's my job, and I know I have to keep that level of professionalism.
Now, when and why did you become vegan?
So I've been vegan for 4 years. This January was my Veganuary anniversary. That's how I started. When I think it was one of the first years that Veganuary existed. I had already been an on-again, off-again vegetarian from all of my 20s. I moved to Europe for a time, which made things a little bit difficult. I had sort of this idea that I wanted to indulge the culture more, things you tell yourself when you start, trying to figure out how to live in the world and partake of different things, including animal products. And then I got to a point of really working super hard to find ethical ways of eating animal products. I'd be contacting farmers and driving far distances to get happy meat and only eating eggs from rescued chickens. And it just got really, really difficult, really, really expensive. And at the same time, in my work as a writer, I had been writing a lot about animal welfare issues, say about circuses and fur fashion. And then I started moving more into animal agriculture, writing about issues like animal transport in Canada and barn fires, issues like that. And in the end, trying to find ways to make it make sense, trying to find a solution that wasn't just that these animals shouldn't be here in the first place. And then my daughter was born. And when she was about 6 months old, I had to come to the realization that I'm about to feed her solid food. And what is that solid food going to be? Can I put chicken in front of her while we were just, spending the afternoon playing with ducks in the park, and she loved it. And so that was ultimately it. She needing to eat food and me being the one feeding this trusting, unknowing child. And then Veganuary. I tried Veganuary and it was so enjoyable. I loved the cooking and it was easy, and I've just never stopped. And here we are 4 years later.
Wow. That's great. So Clover, your daughter, is basically the reason behind the whole reason that you're vegan.
I think that she was the last straw kind of thing. I like to think that I was always vegan at heart. I was sort of an animal activist ever since I saw Free Willy as a kid. I always cared about the planet. I lived through the 90s as a child, and that was always an issue. The ozone layer. And PETA became a thing in my 20s. But I think she was the last straw where I really feel like I had to get my ethics in order. So she really helped me with that.
Right. So living more in line with your values.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I think nothing like having a child to really make you reflect on the way you're living your life and how you want to go forward and what you value as important. And she amplified that for me.
When you're feeding her, did you actually buy the chicken, or did you just were you thinking about it at the store?
It came down to just before she's 6 months old and you start thinking about feeding kids solid food, right? Like moms, we sit around and think about these things a lot. So contemplating, what is her first food going to be? How am I going to do it? Am I going to do baby food, or am I going to do what they call baby-led weaning? So you're thinking about a lot of aspects of what you're going to feed them and how. And then that just became part of it, is could I possibly put this in front of her? And I just couldn't do it. And there was just so many other things I wanted her to try first, avocados, peanut butter, and it just seemed like animal meat just didn't have a place.
How did she respond to all those other foods?
How did she respond? Excellent.
Yeah.
She's an incredible eater. Thankfully, baby-led weaning.
Not a picky eater at all.
No, I mean, my friends who are non-vegan and have children can't believe the things that she eats. I think that's kind of a common sentiment among plant-based children. We go to a kid's birthday party, which is something I get asked all the time. How do you cope with kids' birthday parties and kids eating all these other foods?
Right.
And it was a pizza party. So it was pizza and cupcakes. And the mom is a friend of mine and said, should I just order Clover a vegan pizza? What is that? And I said, just order a vegetable pizza with no cheese. That's it. And so thankfully it was a lovely pizza place, came with spinach and artichokes and all these beautiful things. And the other mothers could not believe watching this child sit at this birthday party eating a spinach covered pizza while their kids are screaming that there's not enough pepperoni and they're throwing pizza and everything like that. And they couldn't believe it. And Clover's just, none the wiser. She doesn't know any different. So she's an awesome eater. I mean, some weeks are better than others.
Sure.
Sometimes kale isn't really her favorite thing, but broccoli always is. So I'm good to go.
That's funny. That reminds me of a story. One time I asked somebody to get me a vegan pizza, and they got me a pizza, no vegetables, just sauce on it.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like,
flatbread.
I'm like, come on, it's vegetables. Just have them throw all the vegetables on there. Come on.
All the vegetables. Add pineapple. Give it all to me. Yeah, I love a vegan pizza, all the vegetables and no cheese. It's what I'm used to now, and I crave it.
Have you ever run into, my youngest one time, we were at a barbecue. She had never known of hot dogs, and she ran over to get a hot dog from the grill. Luckily, my older kids were there to stop her, and before she was able to eat it, they were like, no, that's a hot dog. That's meat. And she's like, what? Have you ever run into anything like that where they don't even have the concept?
Yeah. I mean, she goes to a preschool, thankfully, so she's amongst other people, and she knows that they're eating different things. But the concept of meat, she's only 4.5. So the concept of meat, all she really knows is what we call vegan meat. But she's now started to get a little bit more suspicious because she's amongst other kids eating other things. And I catch myself still saying things like chicken fingers. And she says to me, what? I'm not eating that. And I say, no, they're vegan crispy fingers, I have to convince her, because if I say chicken, that freaks her out.
Yeah,
to
definitely.
her, that's an animal, right?
Exactly.
Not a food. So I think we're going to come across that more and more. But yeah, something like a hot dog is so in the script, it just looks like it looks. Who knows what it is? But I think she would ask me. I hope she would ask me.
Right? I was just very happy that my older kids were there with her to be
Yes,
like, no, no, don't eat that.
that would not have been a fun experience.
I would have felt bad for
Of
her.
all things, hot dogs.
I know, right? Exactly. Now, are there any positive changes that you've noticed since you become vegan physically and mentally?
Yeah, of course. I mean, mentally, as we said already, aligning the values with actions, which, you hear vegans saying so much, definitely feel like I'm finally my true self, living the way that doesn't confuse me anymore. As an animal lover, my whole life, always having this confusion. And that's just not there anymore. So it's a clarity. It's a feeling of clarity, really. And physically, speaking of being in a pandemic, I have found that without having a gym for this long, eating a plant-based diet has really, I think, helped nothing really bad to happen. I can eat still whatever I want, and nothing really balloons. Let's just say that I can still have my fettuccine Alfredo, and I don't have to worry that there's no access to a gym. So that's probably been the easiest part, physically, is that it's just so easy to maintain while still eating everything.
Right. So you didn't get the COVID 20 or whatever, pandemic 20.
Maybe the pandemic 5, but yeah, I think if I was eating real fettuccine Alfredo, things would be a lot different.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you struggle with anything when you transitioned to a plant-based diet?
Yeah, some of the food things were a bit tricky, getting used to, everyone says vegan cheeses, but I did find making my own sort of vegan cream sauces helped quell those kinds of cravings. Going to restaurants, I went vegan when I was living in Denmark, a northern city in Denmark, where there really was not a lot of vegan options. There were some. Denmark makes some of really amazing vegan products. But not a lot of restaurants. A lot of restaurants would have, if you wanted a vegan option, it would be, the ubiquitous salad and French fries. More so, it was dealing with sort of the outside world, which you hear a lot of people say too, is some family and friends sort of waiting for this phase to end, so to speak.
Right.
And what, not even chicken? Those things going over to people's houses, not so much dealing with people trying to debate me on the ethics of it, but people being frustrated that they don't know what to feed you. So you learn how to navigate those things. You learn how to offer to bring your own dish to things, and all those just sort of nuanced cultural and societal things that you have to learn how to navigate, and you can only really get from experience. There's not really a guide on how to navigate those things in your own social circles, and you just figure it out over time.
You mentioned friends and not knowing what to feed you. Have you ever run into any difficulties when you've been at a friend's house?
I think I'm a bit of too much of a control freak to allow that to happen. So if anytime there is, a gathering or a social event or something, pre-COVID, of course, that I always bring something. And now with a child too, I always have, a treat in my purse in case, kids are eating cupcakes or something and she has nothing. And I prepare for myself too. And thankfully I find now, being back in Canada, this day and age, it's so easy. If you're ordering in as a group or something, there's always something for you now. It's so much easier than it was a few years ago, and just getting easier all the time.
Yeah, it really is. I changed to a plant-based diet 8 years ago. And since then to now,
Yeah.
it's become amazingly different. In fact, I just decided to change my plant-based diet to be more plant-based as opposed to junk food vegan,
Beyond
which
meat.
is, I'm kind of a junk food vegan.
Yes, me too. Me too. Depends on the week.
Right, exactly. Depends on the comfort food, how cold it is
Yes.
outside.
Yes, very true.
Now, I noticed that you make mac and cheese with sunflower seeds. You were talking
Yeah.
about stuff just earlier about cheeses and things. How does that work as far as making it from sunflower seeds?
Yeah, so this is something that here in Canada, a lot of the vegans I know have made the switch to sunflower seeds for a variety of reasons. A lot of things that we use cashews for can very easily be used sunflower seeds instead. It's a locally grown crop here in the prairies of Canada where I live. It's far cheaper to buy sunflower seeds than cashews, and we're learning more about some human rights issues with cashew production. The workers suffering burns on their hands, and so as vegans, a lot of us, that bothers us. So Thankfully, there's a doctor here, a registered dietitian, Dr. Pam Ferguson, based out of BC in Canada. And she was the one that did a lot of this research about how to switch over from cashews to sunflower seeds. She did a nutritional breakdown that showed sunflower seeds are actually even better for you, and the price breakdown too, and the environmental breakdown. So in all the ways, it's so much better. So basically, anything you use cashews for, whether it's a cream sauce or mixed in a soup to add creaminess, sunflower seeds do the exact same thing. It's a little bit of an earthier flavor, but I like it better because sometimes I find cashews a bit too sweet. So give it a try, sunflower seeds, if they're accessible where you are.
I'm totally going to give that a try. I have never used sunflower seeds instead of cashews. I'm a big cashew milk, cashew cream guy.
Mm-hmm.
I love adding that into my soups and things like that, my Alfredo sauce.
Yes, exactly. But you can do sunflower seeds the same. Yeah, I do like a really great lemon cream sauce on pasta for like linguine. And it works perfectly the same. And you add enough nutrient, garlic, sunflower seeds, water, the same deal, a little lemon juice. It's give it a try. Let me know what you think after you try it.
I will. I'm very interested to try that. I mean, usually I make mac and cheese out of like potatoes and I don't know.
Carrots, yeah,
Carrots,
yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah.
but sunflower seeds are a really great boost of protein, of course, as we know. Some good oils in there too. So, yeah, give it a try.
Yeah. Where do you get your protein?
Yeah.
That's like the big
Funny
vegan
question.
joke, right?
Yes, yes.
Did you learn anything? You said you struggled with cheeses and stuff like that. What did you learn from those experiences?
I learned that Bosch, the website, the recipe guys, Bosch, know how to quell any cravings that you have when it comes to creams and cheeses. Their camembert dip recipe they've had for, I think, like 5 years. That was one of the first things I ever made that made me realize that I'm not going to die without dairy. And that's a cashew-based recipe. It's so delicious. I feed it to vegan and non-vegan friends alike. So I really learned that you can get along fine without dairy as long as you have some really good recipes, and also that there's really great products coming out now. Violife just came to Canada from Europe. That is a vegan cheese company from Greece, and they know how to make some vegan cheese. So you just have to keep trying things until you find the ones that you like. And I learned there's a lot of trial and error in this.
Yeah, but I would think that there's pretty much trial and error for everybody, right? It's just usually when you're a kid as opposed to when you're an adult.
It's a very good point. That's a very good point.
Was there anything holding you back? You mentioned you were vegetarian. So you were vegetarian for a long time. And then about 4 years ago, you decided to go to a vegan diet. Was there anything holding you back specifically?
Yeah, and in between that, I did do, some ethical meat eating and that too. And I think, what was holding me back is like a lot of people, just the convenience of everyday life. And also what I had been told my whole life about nutrition. And I remember what it came down to was a friend of mine, Anna Pippis. She's a recipe creator in Canada as well. And I remember her just telling me at one point, you don't need to eat animals. And it was such a profound moment because I thought, I'm against circuses, I'm against fur, I'm against leather. I was against all of these forms of animal suffering and exploitation, all down to except I still eat them. I thought, well, but because that's necessary. That's the one thing we need to exploit animals for. And once that one was like, oh, no, wait. No, you don't. You don't. And then I was like, oh, well, then what am I doing this for? So yeah, I think it was just a lot of old ways of thinking and cultural norms that were holding me back, like most people, I'm sure.
The traditional diet that you learned from your parents.
And from school, yeah, the Canada Food Guide, which has now changed as well. This last year, the Canada Food Guide changed to include a lot more plant proteins, and they took dairy off as a food group. There's no specific dairy food group anymore. So things have changed even at the cultural norm level. So I'm glad for that.
I wasn't aware of that. They took the dairy off of the...
Yeah, they made a protein. So now the food groups, it's just a protein food group instead of meat and poultry that it used to be. It's just a protein food group, and it includes an abundance of plant proteins, especially ones native to Canada. Like we are, one of the greatest pulse growers in the world. And so it includes things like that for environmental reasons, because it's the first year that the Canada Food Guide wasn't influenced by the industry by food industries, and instead was influenced by actual food scientists, nutrition scientists, and climate issues as well, things that it should be influenced by. So yeah, it's changed. I don't know if it's changed a lot of Canadians, but it's changed. It's there on paper.
There's a recent, as you brought up Canada there's a recent adgag legislation in Ontario. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's in Ontario as well as Alberta and likely coming up here in Manitoba too. So about a year and a half ago was when we started seeing that sort of global phenomenon, maybe about 2 years ago, of activists trespassing on farms. We saw it all over the world, and live streaming, gathering, real-time footage of what's going on inside of these massive sheds containing animals. And it really shook up the industry a lot, because a lot of the things that they had said in the past is that, activist footage was altered and edited and influencing things in a negative and untrue way. So, but when you're live streaming from, a dairy farm and showing calves in hutches and them suffering in real time, you can't really deny it. So as a result of that and other things, also activists outside of transport trucks, the SAVE movement, which was born here in Canada, have exposed a lot as well of issues of Canada's really awful animal transport regulations, some of the worst in the Western world, because of our really extreme weather. Doesn't matter how cold or how hot, those animals are in open-sided trucks traveling to slaughter every single day, and activists are there documenting it. And so that really has been really impacting the industry. And as a result, farmers and industry and lobbyists have lobbied the government to create what we call adgag legislation that now makes it highly illegal. It already was illegal to trespass, but the fine was it was equal to the crime, right? It was a minimal fine. Now it's upward of $200,000 if you're part of an organization. To make it illegal to trespass, make it more illegal to trespass onto these farms. Also makes it illegal for whistleblowers to come forward. It makes it illegal to go and get a job on a farm under what they call false pretenses. If you're part of an animal rights organization and you pretend to go get a job on a pig farm and film, that's illegal. And also it's illegal to be standing outside of those trucks in Ontario. Wow. They now have what's called, ironically, an animal protection zone around the trucks so that activists can be fined for standing outside the trucks and offering water to pigs on a hot day and filming what consumers deserve to see. So it's been really awful, but thankfully we have a great organization in Canada called Animal Justice, which is who I do the podcast with. The Pawn Owner podcast is with Camille Labchuk from Animal Justice, and they are fighting it. They are going to fight it in court. So a lot of these adgag laws in the States have been deemed unconstitutional, and we're hoping the same thing will happen here.
It's crazy, right? All you're doing is showing you where some of these people get their food from.
Shouldn't everybody want to know that? Why is it a secret? And wouldn't they be proud to show off their work?
Right, especially with those commercials that they run. Oh
my gosh. Yeah, I'm working on a campaign right now, looking at the dairy campaigns here in Canada and in the U.S. for Febudairy, trying to pick apart what they're trying to show, the picturesque industry of dairy.
Right, the one barn with the one cow and the big silo and the happy farmer who goes and he says hi to his cow, and then the cow's like, "Hey, I got some milk. Would you want some?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, that's a great idea."
Yeah, no one's asking where the baby is. No, the baby doesn't exist. It happened. Didn't happen.
Right. And that's one of those things that I think that people, and I know I include myself, they don't realize that the mother has to be pregnant in order to give milk. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it's such a funny thing when I talk to people outside of this vegan bubble and explain that, and people are shocked. Even my mother, who had a grandfather with a farm, and the cow gave milk, and we didn't really think about that part. But you know what it is it's very, very clever marketing. We have been told this from childhood with nursery rhymes, and then we're shown these commercials, like you said, on TV, showing these different things. And so it's this this very clever and blatant tactic of omittance, just leaving that part out. And no one ever thought about it. No one ever thought, because if you just stop to think about it for 2 seconds, everything you know about biology would tell you it's not cows that make milk, it's moms who make milk.
Right. Right.
But no one ever stopped to think about it, because that's just, we don't stop to think about animals and their contribution to what's on our plate, period.
There's this disconnect between people.
Yep.
And where they get their food from.
Yeah, I mean, in all regards, right? We could say that also about a lot of, imported foods that come from problematic places. I mean, no one's really thinking about it. I think there's more thinking about it now, and I'm hoping that as people care about the origins of their food for climate reasons and ethical reasons, that they'll also think about the chicken.
Getting back to the cow and the dairy and the speciesism and feminists, why do you think that that's not a bigger issue?
People don't want it to be.
Right, but I mean, like, feminists are for the female species.
Yep. Yeah, because we're speciesist, and it's hard, and it would make things more difficult, because as soon as people have to make that connection, they have to make a change. And a lot of people are okay with holding a sign. A lot of people are okay with talking with their friends and family. A lot of people are okay with writing essays and articles, but not a lot of people are okay with giving up their food. It seems to be one of the hardest things, one of the biggest sacrifices that people think they have to make until they do it and realize that that's not the case at all. It's the same with, environmental issues. I took my daughter to the Walkout for Climate, the Greta Thunberg climate crisis protest, and there was a handful of us vegans together holding signs saying, Greta's vegan, are you? Or, environmentalists can't eat meat, things like that. And we got people that were angry with us.
Right.
Young people at an environmental activism were angry at us for calling that out, because it's a big thing. It's a good question. I don't know why it seems to be where people stop in their activism.
Like you were mentioning, environmentalists, if you're for the environment, then you should be vegan.
I think so.
I mean, I do too. And I'm not going to say that. I have this story when I was a kid. I was, a teenager or whatever, and I thought I was an environmentalist, and I was all for dolphin-safe tuna. I could eat the tuna, but I couldn't kill the dolphin, type of thing.
Right.
So
there's still a lot of people like that.
yeah, and I get that. I just don't understand. I guess I just don't understand why.
It's the marketing. And now we're seeing even greater marketing when it comes to buzzwords like sustainability. And now we have regenerative agriculture, grass-fed beef. They're really trying to make beef come back. I've written a lot about how regenerative agriculture, holistic grazing, grass-fed beef, all of these things are new marketing ploys being used by the meat industry to try and make not only meat eating seem okay now, but actually necessary. Like, if you don't eat this grass-fed beef burger, then these grasslands are going to die.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, or you could just let them grow.
Yeah.
We have other animals that can poop on the ground. Yeah, but I mean, it's all just marketing. And I think when people want to hear what they want to hear, and the industries give them that information, that they think, okay, good. So I can still eat my burger. They said it was okay, and that's what I wanted to hear. And so there they go. It's clever, and they're very highly funded. So they get the best advertising minds in the world to come up with really great slogans, and people eat it up, literally.
And it's humanely done.
Humane. Yeah, I think that was one of the biggest ones. Whoever came up with that one should have won an advertising award, because that one has gone a long way.
Yeah, they should have won a Clio for sure. The whole humanely killed, I always find that to be a little funny, because it's, in a way, it's like, the old joke of oxymorons, you know what I mean? Jumbo shrimp, all that stuff, and humanely killed has got to be in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, ethical slaughter, humanely killed. I mean, I always say, like, okay, so if your dog is sick, are we going to slit its throat?
Right.
Right? Like that. Is that how we humanely kill animals that we care about, Mr. Farmer? And I mean, the slogan that vegans always use, that there's no ethical or humane or right way to kill someone who doesn't want to die. That seems to shut down anytime any conversation comes up. But then, when I debate with farmers on Twitter, they like to say someone is the word that's wrong there. And that animals aren't someone, that's reserved for people. And I say, well, I mean, I think animals are people. And then you get into issues of personhood and then legalities. And then I've been on Twitter for 2 hours and I gotta stop.
And then they have that line that looks like a waveform. You can eat the cow and not the horse. You can eat the pig, but not the dog.
Yep.
It's just a strange line.
Yeah, and here in Canada we have a really prominent live horse export that I've written about as well, that a lot of people have no idea about. We're the biggest exporter of live horses to Japan because they like horse sashimi, so they have to fly halfway across the world, up to 32 hours standing up in a plane. It's horrific just to land to be slaughtered for horse sushi. And when I write about it, people are up in arms. They're so upset to hear that this is what we do here in Canada, that not only are we slaughtering horses for meat to be shipped, but that we're exporting live horses and how awful it is. And the minute you say, well, what do you think they're doing at the slaughterhouse down the street? What do you think's happening to the pigs that live an hour outside your city? And for some reason, well, but pigs are pork.
Right. You change the name. If you just change the name of the horse meat to something else.
Yep.
As far as your writing, what are you up to these days?
Right now, I'm working on a lot of February stuff because it is February right now. It's always a fun time to hijack the hashtag created by the industry to remind people, or for the first time tell people, why in fact dairy is cruel and unnecessary. And this year I'm focusing on, like we said, their sustainability claims about how they're, world leaders in sustainable farming, that dairy is doing all these great things. It's really a really aggressive PR tactic in response to the plant-based dairy alternatives market just booming. And so, yeah, I'm working on a lot of that stuff right now.
Nice. What is one habit or hack that helps you stay on your plant-based diet, helps you with Clover and kind of being a mom?
Yeah, I think recipes are important. I have a great handful of things that I make on a regular basis that I always have, stuff for in my house, tacos, things like that, that if it's a busy day, always have Beyond sausages in the freezer. You always have those quick meals that you need so that things don't feel hard. But I also like to spend, say, time on the weekends trying new things and sometimes cycling out some of the things you're getting sick of. I mean, I guess just like any mom cooking food for themselves and their kids, it's just you got to keep some things fresh and keep a few on hand that are always going to be a hit. And it's just the same for vegan cooking, really.
I noticed that. Speaking of, I don't know, going out, I noticed it was like vegan week the other week and you were traveling around, checking out all the places in Winnipeg. How'd that work out?
Yeah, it was the first Le Vegan Week that we've had here in Winnipeg, which if you asked me 5 years ago that something like that would happen, you'd think, no way. It was a great way to support local vegan restaurants and vegan-friendly restaurants during a time when here where we are, all the restaurants are closed to indoor dining, so they're really suffering with their businesses. So yeah, I did a lot of pickup and takeout and delivery of lots of amazing vegan dishes. I spent a lot of money and it wasn't great for the waistline, but it was great. And I discovered some new vegan restaurants that I didn't even know about in town. So it was really fun.
Now, was one of those the Apple Tree vegetarian restaurant?
Oh, yes. What a fun discovery that was. And yeah, so that came around at the same time, was discovering that here in the middle of the prairies of Canada, that there was a vegetarian restaurant here in as back as 1907. It was discovered in an old postcard. A local historian was looking through, found the sign, and then we were able to go through old newspaper archives and find lots and lots of ads for this restaurant and some of their menu items, this popular nut meat that the proprietor created, and I recreated it for this article I wrote for the local paper, sort of detailing this very, very ahead of its time type place.
What is in nut meat?
It's a very basic thing. It wasn't as exciting as I was hoping it would be. It was literally just pecans, walnuts, almonds, and dates. So it was really like an early energy bar more than it was a meat. But I think at the time, people were more concerned about energy than about protein. So things like dates and high carb foods would have been more of an in food than our obsession with protein now.
I enjoyed the title of your article, Planting the Seeds.
Yes, yes. Thank you to my editor for that one. That was excellent. I thought you'd like that.
Yeah. Now, what cookbook or book have you gifted to somebody transitioning to a plant-based diet?
I have a couple of this one book that I sort of keep rotating throughout friends who want to try different things, and it's Vegan Comfort Classics by Lauren Toyota. She's a Canadian author. It's a Canadian book, and it has all of the really first things you need to try, and she does a really good job of it. And the photos, of course, are beautiful, which is always enticing. So yeah, that's the one that keeps making the rounds.
Nice. I haven't tried that one. I'll have to check it out.
She has a great blog called Hot for Food.
Hot for Food. We'll write that in the show notes. Now, finally, can you give me one word to describe how you felt before you became vegan, and now one word to describe how you feel now that you are vegan?
Yeah, I think as it came up in the conversation before, I think before would have been confused, and after, or conflicted, confused, conflicted, and after would be clear. Clear.
Confused, conflicted, and clear.
A little alliteration there for you.
Yeah, exactly. I noticed that. As a writer, I would expect that.
There you go.
It's been such a pleasure having you here on Plant Your Seed. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now, what's the best way for people to follow you on social media?
Yeah, it depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for recipes and everyday life, vegan parenting, on Instagram, I'm at JessLSR. If you're into more reading my work and watching me debate with farmers, you can find me on Twitter at JessLReid, R-E-I-D.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Hope you are inspired by this story. And remember, it's never too late to plant your seed. Links to everything we talked about on the podcast can be found on Instagram at plant.yourseed in the show notes tab in the bio. If you enjoyed the show, remember to leave us a review. And until next time, thank you for listening.